G'day and welcome to Hoyslers Cab Confession. I'm Jordan Lee with Jack Perkins. G'day, Jack.
G'day, Jordan. I'm excited and delighted to be a part of Cab Confessions. It's going to be a little bit of fun, I think.
This is numero uno, the first, the pilot, the trailblazer, so to speak. So hopefully that one listener that's currently listening can stick with us for the whole episode and learn something about you and me.
The best thing about one listener is when you find one more, you've doubled your audience, George. So we've started a low base, but we'll get there.
And so we'll just compound the listeners over time, and hopefully in 20 years we've got 100.
And they'll be back listening to where it all began.
Yep, right here, right now. So, Jack, supercar driver, media personality. How the Jack Perkins that's sitting in front of me now, how did he become?
Well, you've left a little bit off my sort of CV there, mate. I like to think of myself as a farmer as well.
Sorry. And that's probably the big thing also for you being a part of the Hoyslers team now as our brand ambassador is the agricultural and that farming background is a massive part of who you are as well.
Yeah, so for those that sort of don't follow motor racing or understand who and what I am, I was sort of born into motor racing. My father, Larry Perkins, was a successful race car driver, won Bathurst a few times with Peter Brock and had made it to Formula One in the 70s. But also Dad was from the Mallee here in Victoria, a little place called Cowangi. And it's a place where we spent a lot of time as children. It's where my grandfather Eddie was from, who was an original Chamberlain tractor dealer.
And that's another little nugget that we've learned about the Perkins side of things.
Yeah,
as we've gone along.
And my dad's upbringing was on the family farm, driving tractors. And he tells me that Grandpa was a better mechanic than farmer, and he wasn't a very good farmer, but he was better at kind of fixing everyone else's stuff, and he was heavily involved with Chamberlains. And I was fortunate enough to spend a lot of time with Grandpa when I was a young fella, and he passed away in 2006, but shared lots of stories with me.
So 2006, 20 years old, so that's still some really good memories that you would have with your grandfather and those memories being tied to the farm.
Yeah, and my grandfather Eddie spoke so fondly of the Mallee district and his love for the Big Desert National Park.
Yep.
Walking out there as a kid looking for mallee fowls nests, and his stories of riding horses to school and walking kilometres on kilometres because that's what they did. And now we just jump in the ute and go quick fang down the road.
Yep.
But so I've got a really good taste of the area and his upbringing, and then into Dad's upbringing as well. And there's always been that kind of mechanical engineering type link between both my father and my grandfather. And then as a young fella, kind of, like I said, I grew up in Melbourne. I love to tell people I'm from the country, but I am a city slicker, but I spent a lot of time on the farm when we were kids growing up. And then, I always wanted to be a race car driver and, started racing go-karts when I was 12. But I wanted to race go-karts when I was 5, but Mum and Dad kept buying me golf clubs and stuff like that, trying
to be the tiger before tiger.
Yeah, trying to keep me away from motor racing. It's a tough game, it's expensive, and when I'm looking back on it now with my own kids, I would be definitely doing the same. But I've been fortunate enough to kind of make it to the top level in Australian motorsport. I'm still there today as a co-driver, lining up for, I think it's my 17th or 18th Bathurst 1000. But racing is actually still a small part of my life because I only do a handful of races each year, and through the balance of the year I work in my own engineering business. But I still play a very active role in our farming side of things, which is sort of the tie-up here in particular, and my interest for the farm and what we do out on our farm is something that I put a lot of effort in throughout the year. And Dad bought a family farm back off his uncle in the sort of late 90s, maybe early 2000s, and we were share farming with our neighbour.
I'd say that'd be a good investment right about now with the way that land prices have gone over the
Yeah,
last little bit.
yeah, absolutely. And a lot of guys that Dad went to school with have been able to really kind of move on from the family farm and get a healthy paycheck for that. And that's great for a lot of people in the district where potentially the future of the farm is running out. Kids have moved off the farm and whatnot. But for me, we stopped using our share farmer for a long time and kind of let our land just sit there. And another mate of mine who lives up in Tuddy, just down the road from Cowangie, was looking to find a bit more dirt. And Scotty Lindener, who we share farm with today,
and Heusler's.
Heusler's customer, absolutely. Work quite close with Glary and the team here at Heusler's. And so he was looking for a bit more land, and we had our land, and I sort of said, well, we want to be involved as a share farming arrangement, but more than just a landowner.
Not the traditional share farming arrangement. You've got an active role. It's very different to probably that traditional share farming arrangement.
Yeah, we don't want to be just people that live in Melbourne or Sydney.
Collins Street Cowboys.
Yeah, exactly. So part of the deal was righto. During harvest, in particular, one or both of myself and Dad need to be on the farm for harvest and playing an active role, involved in the preparation of all the equipment. Throughout the year.
And the great thing about that too is it's that one or two less labour units that Scott needs to find and advertise for. So.
Yeah, and it is tricky because you're often finding the casual worker is limited in experience.
And care.
And care. I was about to say mechanical sympathy. Mechanical sympathy is the word, and kind of respecting your machinery. You've got hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of gear there, and you necessarily want to trust people on the first day that have got no experience driving the machinery with your gear. And it's not just your gear, it's your livelihood.
Well, it's the setup. It's making sure that, and it is your livelihood. You look at it and go, if it's all well and good to run a header, but are you running it to its capacity, and is it optimised? And how much grain are you throwing out the back? Because at the end of the day, that's the difference. That could be a profit.
Oh, 100%. So for me, I think our first year was either 2011, 2012. So in that first year, I was, very limited on hands-on experience. I started off, I think I was a passenger in the chaser bin, so I wasn't even driving. And Dad had sort of progressed to the header pretty quickly, based on how it all was working. And then, I got to jump in the driver's seat of the chaser bin, and then tackled the on-the-run emptying from the harvester into the bin.
And hand steering that with the chaser bin at the time. That's an experience in itself.
It is. And again, that's something that you need, two very capable operators to make sure you don't have a big stuff up. And that being said, I'd like to think myself as capable, but we come close a couple of times where you can see the comb drifting in between the chaser bin and the trailer, and you're thinking, hang on, one of us is offline here. And there was one instance, which is going to sound like a cab confession, actually. But
just opening the batting straight away.
Yeah, but there was one instance where the actual auto steer had come off, and I was in the chaser, and I knew I wasn't doing anything wrong, but I thought, crikey, this harvest is getting very, very close. And those 30, 40-foot combs are not the most easiest thing to kind of wrap around the axle of the chaser bin, so we managed to sort of divert any issues there. But, just sort of learning those roles and then emptying your chaser bin into the truck or into your field bins, then the next obstacle, silo bags and things like that.
I've got like exactly what you're talking about. I've got plenty of cab confessions about like exactly like what you're talking about there. So,
and I found the thing, and I don't mean this necessarily directly to Scotty, who's our share farmer, but quite often farmers will give you a 30-second crash course and then
And
chuck
they're
you the
just
keys.
Gone, yeah.
And lo and behold, they've not only have they've gone, they're not answering on the UHF, and the
Yeah.
phone won't have any service.
And you're sort of sitting there going,
Yeah. So you gotta use your lateral brain and kind of problem solve a bit. But long story short, over the period of, I think I did 7 straight harvests with Scotty, and I think I got my first run in the driving the header around about 2015. And from there I didn't want to get back in the chaser. I kind of enjoyed.
No, you enjoy the header, and
Yeah.
it's even from my experience and the involvement that I've been fortunate to have with, I'll say the mum's side family's farm. That's shaped me up, and I know exactly what you're talking about. The same sort of experiences and the like. And I still haven't graduated to the header. I'm still on the chaser bin.
Well, you'll grow up one day and get there.
Yeah. For the amount of grey hair that I've got. No, it's a while sort of there's derogatory terms for chaser bin drivers, but I do look at it. It's almost like paddock logistics.
Yeah.
The chaser bin. You're not just. You might not be it's almost like a band. Like the header driver is the front man. Like he's the man. He's the, or he, she's the gun. And back in the chaser bin, you're almost on drums. You're not seen. You're just keeping a rhythm. But actually, having said that, you are keeping rhythm of harvest in the chaser bin. You're keeping the grain moving. You're talking with the trucks. You're keeping the wheels rolling.
Well, we've found, and we'll probably cover this in greater length in future podcasts or even at the back end of this one, but I've certainly found in our farm we've worked our best when we've got someone in the harvester, someone in the chaser bin, and then a bit of a runaround gopher, someone that can move the utes, move the field bins, liaise with the truckie, go and grab your lunch, grab your dinner. And
even think of it, and again, like 100% completely understand. When I first started my career in the John Deere world, there's a couple of farmers that we ran some demo programs with, and exactly what you're talking about. I moved those field bins and did all those things because I'd worked on farm and contract teams and that I wasn't just sitting in the ute in air conditioning in the corner of the paddock. It was running around. It is, and people love having their lunch brought out to them. And
it's downtime that you're missing out on, and that's why when there is 2 of you, sometimes you might find that the chaser bin isn't moving at the right time because you're off getting lunch or running around doing something. So that's my sort of little bit of take on that. But just covering off the harvest side of things, the one thing that none of us enjoy are those breakdowns. And
you're in height, in stature, you're not the tallest bloke going around.
No, and I've been roped into to many, and quite often my phone reminds me with the photo memories and things. And the most recent one I saw was standing there in overalls packing wheel bearing grease into the new wheel bearings on the chaser bin.
Were they still Perkins Engineering sort of Castrol overalls, or
they're a bit more like the blue mechanic butcher looking ones, actually.
Yeah.
And I'd packed wheel bearings with grease as a kid in the racing world, and then these bearings off the hub of the chaser bin were 3 times the size, and I volunteered for it and got that job. Which I've
got my phone on the desk here, and while it's on silence, I think that's still a slab. Right. So I'll put my hand up for that one. But sorry,
that's all right. But maybe on our social channels when we're talking about photos, we might be able to drop a few of them out there so people can sort of see what we're talking about. But there's other photos and memories that have popped up where we've been using the angle grinder in the middle of a paddock on a 35-degree day. Thankfully, we didn't catch a fire, down the scrub or anything. But we've had little fires on our headers and
like a lot of people like bearings, like just you talk about packing greasing bearings and the like, and just that preventive maintenance. It's so easy to overlook and to have a bearing fail on you.
Oh, absolutely. And those things where when they fail and they increase in temperature as a result of mechanical failure, that's when you do need to be mindful of what the consequences could be. And in harvest, a fire is the worst possible thing that could happen. And we're on a few Facebook groups where you see, brand new headers burnt to the ground and things like that, and you think, Be a tough one to swallow if that was
Yeah.
your own farm and your own machinery. But I guess that's my intro, and I want to swing over to you, Jordan. Before it's not just about me. This is about you as well, and your role as a production systems manager for Häusler's. Give us your background and how you've ended up in the hot seat opposite me.
Yeah, well, probably a similar story to you, Jack. That first generation removed from the farm, always wanted to be back on the farm. Both mum and dad are farm kids, and they moved to Werribee or left high school and moved to Werribee. And the funny thing is that mum's actually originally from Sea Lake, and she left when she was 17. And so I'm 38 now. A couple of years ago, probably 34, let's say 35, I find myself back in Sea Lake working for Häusler's. So, and a lot of school holidays on the farm really has shaped, has had a big part of my life and shaped me and the passions that I've got. I can remember as a kid going into the Sea Lake shop and grabbing the toy catalogue like all kids do, and you open it up and you dream about all the toy tractors and all the models that you could have at home and that sort of things. Never had them. Granddad would repurpose the toys from my mum and uncle's childhoods, and I didn't know it was subliminal, but he always painted everything in John Deere green, which at the time I thought it was just like John Deere. I think it was the main spray paint that was actually in the shed. Anyway, that's worked really well with.
It might have been the cheapest.
Probably too.
Not the real deal.
Yeah. No. It was a real deal. It was well and truly, and that's lots of childhood memories on the farm, and as I've got older and my career went from being a diesel mechanic to spend a little bit of time in a foundry, just in a maintenance role. So again, like yourself, Jack, it just comes back to the preventive maintenance. And when I started in that role, breakdowns were just left, right, and centre. It just absolutely drove me nuts. And but that was good to really save a house deposit to put myself through Longy College or Longeron College out in the Wimmera. And that's I went into that. I went in and I did operate machines before that and the like. And I went into Longy with two thoughts. I thought I want to either go corporate farm management, or I always had this interest in ag technology, and that comes from in 2003. My uncle got his first brown box, or the original Green Star, and that was the first time that I actually used auto steer on the farm. And I'm like, this is pretty cool. I wonder how you get a career in it. And there wasn't any career paths or anything like where Häusler's Digital has developed now. That wasn't around. It wasn't around 20 years ago. So that's where things have evolved. I've been in the ag industry. I've really been in the ag industry for 2009. I'd say predominantly full time. I've had a few different roles in that time. Been a failed agronomist. I'll say that I've been a failed agronomist. If any tips for those that are looking to go into agronomy, being an agronomist being a grad agronomist during a drought is probably not going to do your career the greatest or actually it's not going to do your confidence the world of good, especially if you're a sales agronomist and you sell one like 20 litre drum of Roundup for the whole year. Like that's it makes it pretty hard on the old sales side of things. So and really the passion that I've had for ag, it's a massive part of my life, and even to look at where I look at how I've followed you in the past, Jack, before we've got to know each other. Well, it's very much the social media side that you showed. Well, I'll say I'm no longer on Twitter, but you're on Twitter. I followed you on Twitter, and I started seeing the farming side of things, and that really sort of resonated with me. And I'm like, well, actually, this bloke's not too much different to me. We're both going down the same things. You race cars professionally. That was also always a dream. Actually, the two things that I can say is I always want to be a farmer and a race car driver, and you're both. So I'm a little bit jealous there, but but it's great to be able to actually embark on, I'll say, what we're doing here as a journey together. It's not. I never thought that I've wanted to do this podcast for a long time, but I never thought that I'd actually be having someone that that I've followed and actually really enjoyed their motorsport journey and getting to know each other's and a lot of the similarities that we have. It's been great to get this going.
Now, you come up with the name, Cab Confessions.
Yep.
So, what is Cab Confessions?
Actually, before we do jump into Cab Confessions, I forgot to introduce our primary producer, Will. So, Will Heusler, who's running all the buttons and the mics and everything in the background. Welcome.
G'day, how are you?
How are you, Will?
Good, yeah, really good.
That's good.
Yeah.
And
He's making us sound good.
yes. It's not the magic from us. It's actually Will Heusler running everything in the background. So, Will is our group use manager and also running logistics and a lot of other things. So
It keeps you busy.
it does keep you busy, as well as jumping in the room here with Jack and myself for the podcast. So,
And he gets to listen to the podcast
live.
before anyone else
live.
giving us thumbs up or thumbs down.
Actually, Will is our live studio audience.
Yeah, good.
So
Win-win situation.
yeah. So when it came to the Cab Confession side of things, well, actually where that came from was actually having pizza and beer at Lou's house. Lou Heusler, Will's father, and Will's twin brother Tom was there, and we talked about the podcast, and it's like, well, what are we going to call it? And I'm like, oh, well, what about? And I was like, well, what about if we actually have, when we do have growers and industry people on, why don't we actually have them confess a story? Not something that's going to get them into too much trouble, but at the time it seemed like it was going to be the end of the world. But now it's actually, like, how many funny stories have you got in the background that just, at the time it felt like it was just such a way that you thought the world was almost going to end, but now you look back and go, that's a pretty funny story. And that's where it's like, well, it's kind of like confessing, and that's where it's like, oh, okay, well, what about Cab Confessions? And Lou goes, I don't know where your mind goes, but I like it. So that's where the actual the name of it come from.
A lot of the Cab Confessions would probably need to make sure there's not a rating on our podcast if it's an age limitation. There's some stories I'd have to use some expletives.
Yeah, no, it's very much keeping it. Let's call it keeping on the up and up. I don't really want to go into those murky waters. We'll say. So.
No, it's good. And I appreciate you asking me along for the ride, and I appreciate Lou's vision to sort of back us in to do this, and obviously the support from Heusler's is great. So I guess, what do you want to achieve from Cab Confessions other than a massive audience of people listening?
A massive audience of one.
So tell your friends about this podcast while we're going.
Yep, spread it far and wide. Well, really, I always thought there's different podcasts that I listen to, and there's a lot of dry ag podcasts out there, and I look at what we're doing, Jack, and really want to make it relaxed, entertaining, and a bit humorous, and really somewhat be a bit like the Hamish and Andy of agriculture. That's probably where I'd like to get to.
Or for the older crowd that know Roy and HG.
Yeah. For the older, actually, there's a wide demographic. Well, if we're going to if we're going to talk about Roy and HG, I really reckon that you're definitely Roy in the partnership, and I'm probably a bit more HG like. So I don't know about actually Hamish and Andy. Well, I am taller than you, so that probably works as well in that.
Man, I'd swap bank balances with Hamish and Andy any time. I wouldn't pick. I wouldn't discriminate against either.
No. I was listening to one of their listening to them the other day on radio, and they were talking about they had a bet going on, and it was about whoever won the footy game had to get a ride in the loser's friend's most expensive vehicle.
Oh.
And Will, did you hear that one?
No, not yet.
Anyway, so it's actually it was on the rush hours with JB and Billy and listening to that, and because Andy had been on a private jet, so Hamish was like, well, if Melbourne won, I'm getting a ride on a private jet, and if Hamish won, then he was going to send Andy up to one of his mates' farm and go for a ride on a header because it was the most expensive thing that he actually knew. So I thought that was kind of a bit humorous, but maybe one of those X9s is probably the way to go on that.
That's it, and I mean that's again, I guess when you think about who's going to listen to us, I think of people driving.
It's
machinery,
being in the cab.
Yeah. It may not, but it may not also be on the farm. It might be just
in the ute driving,
country driving. Yeah,
country driving. It could. I'd love to think that we're getting listened to in Burke Street or in Collins Street or someone in an office
or on a tram.
Yeah.
But I guess it's not that the podcast is going to be helping you get through harvest necessarily from a tutorial point of view, but
no.
It's about shedding a bit of light on the industry as well, isn't it, mate?
100%. And the amount of stories and the amount of conversations that I have with growers that it becomes repetitive. I'd like, and the podcast that I look at is, how do I get my message out faster? How do we move digital agriculture faster? Because if I'm going to one farm at a time, or very fortunate to have built Hoysler's Digital to now where we've got a staff of 5 people and having a consultant in each location that Hoysler's has is massive, considering that I've been with Hoysler's for not even 3 years, and to turn around and develop this part of the business.
Can you just expand on that?
Yeah.
While people that are listening may not be familiar with Hoysler's Digital specifically, because that's your sort of
baby.
your I was about to say your baby. That's a good way of putting it.
Where technology is moving so fast, and once upon a time, I'll use in a John Deere dealership, you'd have one person that knows everything that everything when it comes to technology. They're the guy that you talk, or the guy or the girl that you talk to about my auto steer won't work, my GPS won't work.
That sounds like Glary for us.
Yeah, it is, and that's where really starting to work with Glary. We've got 2 totally different minds. We've got 2 totally different streams, and in future episodes we will have a history lesson with Glary. So look out for that one. He's I don't know how he's going to react to it, but I'm
he's
sure
a good man. He's a good man.
Yeah, he's a great. He's a wealth of knowledge, and he's very much your nuts and bolts, your wires, and from that workshop technical support, where my brain's more in the crop production. In the past, I've been burnt out by the role that I've had at other dealers, because I really struggled with diagnostics of electrical stuff, and I just got to a point where I go, it's got to be easy driving a tractor. Where I see digital is I've got a passion for it. I've got a handle on it, and building this part of the business is going to be huge. And it's the support that we can give growers, and they're going to need to navigate that, especially as data capture becomes bigger and bigger. Well, they're going to be looking for support, and that's where we're going to need more and more a bigger and bigger team. So if anyone that is listening, that one person that's listening, and you've got an interest in digital agriculture, will definitely give us a call. We'll definitely look at giving you a job, and potentially, hopefully, not only you become an employee, but you can find another listener.
Yeah, but I must admit, from the time I've spent with not just the staff here at Hoysler's, but the growers that we've worked with, especially on our crop tour and things, they do, and I'm not just pumping your tyres up, they do speak quite highly of you and the team, what you guys have done, and really grabbing this technology and understanding that, hey, this can really improve how a farmer and a grower is going about their business. And from the outside looking in, I've always seen the farmers in our district in particular, kind of that older generation, people like my dad's age in the 60s and 70s, and they're a bit hesitant of change.
Yeah.
And the technology can kind of, I shouldn't say scare people, but it's a bit daunting. You know, the first of the mobile phones coming out, this generation that I'm talking about, we're a bit resistant to want to get around it.
And to think about, and I'll put it into perspective, like I was the last, I reckon I would have been one of the last students in my class at high school, like 2003, to get a mobile phone. Like my mates had phones, everyone just called the house.
Yeah.
Like, George's out in the ute, I'll leave a message. And it just got to the point where it's like, you got to get a phone.
I was like that only recently with emails on my phone. I never wanted emails on my phone. You want to sit down at your computer and do your emails.
And think about it.
Because then you're out in the field or you're doing something and you see an email, then your brain needs to respond before you can kind of get it out of your brain. So I can resonate with not wanting to have the phone, but equally, obviously, now that's part of life, and it's about managing your time, isn't it?
And to think about, like when I think about that, and I remember the first text message I sent, I reckon it took about half an hour and about 3 goes, and that was actually to respond to my actual first girlfriend, and it took me such a long time.
Is this a cab confession?
Oh, could be, but yeah, it just. And to think that going from that as that 20 years ago to now having this digital team and what we're doing, like I've got friends from high school that can't believe that I've got the job that I've actually got, because I go, we would never have guessed that I'd actually end up like this. So
it's good.
Yeah, it's a different world, and it's changing. I'd like to think that we can also change industry as in a sense, actually be seen as a collaborator with different partners, whether he's industry partners or private, to get and coming back to what you've touched on with the crop tour, like to get some of those actual private companies that came along on the tour, they've reached out to me and said, we want to do stuff next year. We want to do better trials and treatments and record that data in the paddock. I feel very proud about that, Jack.
Oh, I think it's great, and I guess I keep thinking that our listeners could be anywhere in Australia or in the world, and to sort of circle back on where we are, we're in the northwestern corner of Victoria in the Mallee district, and earlier this year you organised a bus tour, sort of post-COVID, where we could get some growers together and some suppliers and kind of visit a few different farms in the district. And it was great to just get everyone together because, from my industry, quite often if you deal with your opposition,
it's what's going on here.
You don't want to, that's competition. You don't want to be giving up trade secrets. But in this industry in particular, I noticed that kind of a rising tide will help all waters.
Yes, and looking at what the Vic No Till motto or slogan is, it's farmers helping farmers.
Yeah,
and while you're in competition with a neighbour or someone down the road, but you have a beer with them on Friday night and your mates, and you want to help your mates, and yes, you might be in competition with one another, but at the end of the day, everyone's really rising. And looking at, and I'll think about Sea Lake in particular, and starting to talk with someone, starting to learn a few of the things that are happening around Sea Lake. I'm surprised through TikTok and Snapchat and things like that the growers are sending to one another about Operation Centre and what they're doing with in regards to digital ag and John Deere. It's like one grower does it, and then that goes out on Snapchat, and then I'll get a call going, how do I do this? I saw someone say do this, or someone's got their phone and they're talking about what's happening with Operation Centre at the footy. Again, it's that help to, how do I do this? I want to be set up the same as so and so. And that's where we need to have a bigger and bigger team, because it's that wave that's coming, and if we're not prepared to do that, then we can't support it.
And one of the takeaways for me from the crop tour was Hoysler's we're green machines, John Deere's, right?
Yeah.
But one of the farms we went to, which I find fascinating, was they're red machines,
Link Lehman, yep.
but using some of our
Yep,
Op Center
yep,
and
yep.
green equipment. And to me, that was really interesting. That's a bit like in the old Holden Ford days.
Putting a Ford engine in the Commodore?
Yeah, something. That, to me, that's what it felt like. But once I'd spoken to the grower and spoken to yourself about it, it's sort of not really like that. But
No.
it's just sort of taking what you feel is what you need for
Yeah,
your property.
And with the likes of, we're talking about Link here, with what he's been doing on his farm, and I'll say he's been the poster boy of the BCG with ag tech, and he's seen in that light, and I was actually rather interested to go, okay, well, what makes this guy tick? And I was fortunate enough in a previous role to have actually met Link a few times, and previously I'd been working for Landmark /Nutrient, and there was a GRDC for soils and fertiliser project that Link was a part of. So I'd at least had that connection there with him, and even going around to different farmers, he was set up, and he was probably one of the best set up in the area. Anyway, when I'd started with Hoyzers, I was like, maybe I should go and have a visit with Link and see what he's actually doing, and learn probably a bit like us. It's like learn what's going on in the other's mind. And we sat down, we gelled, and we both saw that we can. Yeah, there's a relationship there that you can help one another. And it's great to be able to call Link up on a Friday night, and you've got the Ingle sort of in the back of the ute, and what are you up to? And just pop in and have a chat and maybe a beer, and that's definitely one thing I enjoy about the industry. It's relationships.
And that you can see that between the growers and in particular yourself, but the other, I guess, it's not part of it all, but it's a big part of the digital side is the data collection.
Yeah.
In years gone by, it was just measure your yields and how many trucks went out the door.
What's your grain tickets down at at the AWB receival site? Yeah.
And hope the truck driver recorded the right amount of loads and stuff. But from a motor racing point of view, I mean, data collection has played a massive role in what we do from not just a driving point of view, because you're held to account how you drive in the vehicle and how you get around the racetrack, but it's also about monitoring the trends of the vehicle, keeping an eye on the maintenance schedules and things like that. And that's now becoming such a big part in the ag industry, but we're fortunate, and it comes back to the breakdown sort of stuff we're talking about. In motor racing, we're very fortunate that we have a 1,000 kilometre race at Bathurst. Everything has to do a minimum of 1,000 Ks. So that's the minimum. Yep. So you start to work around life in your components, using data collection to administer how your componentry is going to get to that 1,000 minimum.
How are you going to get that life out of a brake pad? How are you going to get that life out of whatever component it is, or your tyre? What tyre selection you're going to have?
Yeah. And so once you get to 1,000 Ks, you go, righto, let's get to 2,000. Let's get to 3,000. So we get to a stage where in our previous generation supercars, the back axles would do 12,000 kilometres. And in farming, I look at it in a similar way, because harvest is a Bathurst 1,000 kilometre race, but it goes for sometimes months. Yep. But the data collection starts in mapping out your paddocks, doesn't it?
It does, and it comes back to having that solid foundation, having that base of the data, that baseline data set.
And it's not so much about the performance of your beautiful John Deere machines. It's what you're putting in the ground, how you're managing that, and so on. You can elaborate beyond that.
Yeah. Oh well, and it's just taking different part or different bits of information, I'll clarify that. I don't want people to think that we're doing precision agronomy. Like Hoyzers and Hoyzers Digital isn't about precision agronomy. It's very much about collaborating with the grower, their agronomist, whatever other third parties they are. It's got to be a collaborative approach. We all have our strengths, so why would I want to go and play in an area that I have to learn, spend 5 years to get up to a point where I'm probably a master? Well, how about I go and actually engage with someone that's already up and going?
Is that another slab?
Yeah, we'll call it. Yeah, right. I'm up for 2. So,
no, and I guess for us as well, representing Hoyslers, I'm looking forward to this journey with our podcasting, but it's also, we want people to engage with us.
Yeah.
So there's websites, social media.
Social media. Yep. I'm looking forward to doing the video content with you, Jack, as I do in upcoming podcasts. I want to talk about lawn care. I ran that idea past Lou. He thought that I was bloody stupid, but obviously hasn't seen all everything on social media that of all these different lawn care YouTube channels. Like I think about these lawn tips up in sort of Orange. Like I think he's making his living just off what he's getting on YouTube now, and that's just purely on lawn care. So I'm looking forward to auto steering.
This is where you've toyed this idea of chucking an auto steer on my mower.
Yeah, yep. So I'm really keen to do that, and I'm really looking forward to that, and starting to get some nice stripes and some nice lines going on at your place and a few patterns. I reckon that we can do some pretty cool stuff there.
It'll look like the MCG on Boxing Day.
That's the goal.
Well, that's I'm excited for it. And look, is there anything else in our first episode that we need to cover off?
Do you want me to actually open the batting on the confessions?
Yep.
All right.
Fire away.
All right. So I can confess this week that I have had a 200 litre tray mate, Goldacre sprayer tray mate, off my uncle for the last 4 years.
This is the one that you're resisting giving back.
Yeah, there's a bit of repair work. I had it loaded up, and I was doing a job for the listeners. I'm a wannabe race car driver, so being a go-karter in the past, I'm not racing at the moment, but I was doing the lawn care at the Horsham, the Wimmera Kart Club, and wanted to spray the weeds out there. Had a full load of chemical on board, and it was in a Falcon. Oh, not a Falcon. It was in I had a Ranger at the time from Nutrien. So I can't close the tailgate and fill the sprayer. And anyway, I had it sitting on the tailgate. I accelerated a little bit down the straight, and the sprayer came out. The other part of that is the fact that when the Victorian Country Series came around, there was actually a big bald spot because I'd made the mix so hot. So there's nice green grass around the main straight, and then this just bare earth, just scorched earth, just sitting there in front of the lap scorer's box. So I'll confess that I caused the scorch-earth on that one, Jack.
I suppose it's probably now my turn for a cab confession.
Oh, that's all right. This is going to be like a Matty, there's going to be like a Langer and Hayden opening partnership fight, I think.
Well, yeah, I mean, I can't think of anything in the most recent period in terms of this year, but I always think back at the various times where I've been driving the old 9770 and if there's anything that could be considered of a cab confession, and look, there definitely is. The main thing, I guess, in our area, especially on our paddocks, a lot of sand hills, and those first few times I was driving, quite often there'd be a fair bit of sand coming in on board on where it shouldn't be coming in with the wheat, and we would often get times where we needed to stop and try and clean up the comb, and I decided that it was going to be a lot easier because it was happening so often that I would get a breaker bar and a socket with, I think it's a 19mm socket on both sides underneath the comb, and I could just drop that big metal tray and it would save me about half an hour trying to dig the sand out with my hands. So I decided that I could dump the tray, dump the sand and get back in the cab quick enough. So look, it's a pretty tame cab confession, but it was a bit of a shortcut to get the sand out of there. And since then, I found it a lot easier just to not grab the sand to begin with. But the breaker bar and the socket still lives in there.
Oh, right. So is that known that breaker bar and socket still lives in there?
Yeah, one Larry Perkins might have used that as well a few times when he was taking on a bit of sand. For those out there that are looking for a quick evacuation of sand, lift the comb up, put the safety in, drop those 2 bolts, and there goes all your sand.
Yep. Well, I was going to say that's tips from out of Coangie.
That's it.
or do we actually sort of classify as tutty tips?
That could be tutty tips, or I'm trying to think of something that rhymes with Coangie.
Yeah, that's all.
Coangie cheats.
Yeah, right. There we go. Well, it's been a pleasure opening the batting here, and it's really looking forward to where we take this podcast, Jack.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun, and look forward to bringing you different stuff each and every podcast episode. So thanks both to you, Jordan and Will, for having me along, and let's get the show on the road.
Yep. Thank you, primary producer Will.